To the sexual relationship with one of her 14-year-old students, and she also talked about the time that she says she was raped as a teenager. Take a listen.
So how is what happened to you different than what you did to this 14-year-old boy?
I think first, my rape was a violent rape.
So because yours was not a violent rape of this student, you think that's a big difference?
Well, it's a difference. I don't know if it's a big difference. You know, a 14-year-old 10 years ago is different than a 14-year-old today.
This is from Washington, D.C. Welcome to you, Alan.
How are you, Alex?
I'm well, thanks. I hope you are too. Lots to talk about here. Boy, this is the kind of thing that a lot of people want to talk about because we hear this soundbite from Debra and she says that she was raped when she was young, just 13-year-olds. First of all, in your experience, sexual offenders, do they typically have a past of abuse themselves?
Well, not all sexual offenders as a whole, that's kind of a myth, but female sexual offenders often have a history of rape. However, I think we're focusing on the wrong key characteristic here. You know, this is a date rape, and I think it is important, but it occurred in the context of three things. A very immature young woman, a very dependent young woman, and most important of all, a woman with bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
Now listen, if I'm in the audience and I don't know what bipolar disorder is, I kind of roll my eyes and say, all right, another excuse. But you've got to know what bipolar disorder is. This is something that makes people very, very impulsive, very hypersexual, particularly women, in exactly the way that we've seen with Favee and with Lipman. Like it or not, this is the fact. It makes people do wild sexual things that they would otherwise never do. And remember, we haven't seen this with Favee before this episode.
Okay, you're talking about biological or chemical dysfunctions and disorders that may be going on within her, but we heard her talk about the 14-year-old victim. She says guys that are 14 now are different than the older days when guys are 14. There's a lot more out there. And this, to me, speaks to the larger societal effects of being exposed to so much sexual stimuli. Are we becoming desensitized to all of it? What do you think?
I wouldn't say that we're becoming desensitized to it. I would say that we're becoming oversensitized to it. This is a culture, Alex, that is awash in sexual expectations. And so imagine being a 14-year-old boy who is being inundated with messages of being sexual and how to be sexual and how to be a man. There's even more of a pressure to prove yourself. And remember, with Favee, there was this moment where he brought his friend into the classroom so that she could expose herself to him. She was probably manic. This is a boy who's trying to prove something in a way that's even a little bit more dramatic than it's been in the past. So there is this tremendous pressure to be sexual that comes from, you know, many cultural sources, particularly in the media. A lot of kids make it through with good parenting, some don't, but it jacks up the pressure on kids.
What about the reaction from people around the country? Anybody that looks at this situation, you've got the guys that are high-fiving, doing the backslapping, saying, you did great, you know, here, pal. You were a 14-year-old and you nailed this girl.
Every boy's dream, right?
Absolutely, you've got that. And I mean, is this something that you're seeing more of an upswing? Because it may have been thought, but it would have been kept quiet in the past.
Well, I don't think that we're seeing an upswing. And I think, look, Alex, first of all, there is a real tendency to be interested in such a story as this because it captures the attention of people who want to see women, frankly, being more sexually liberated. Another pressure we have in our culture, even at this rarefied point in our society, is for women to be less sexually aggressive, at least overtly, than men. So when we see a woman like Favee or like Lipman all of a sudden just laying it out in this way, it's fascinating to people. But something we should remember, it is rare. Female teacher sexual offending on students is the least frequent category of sexual offending. It doesn't happen that much.
Alan, I do want to ask you, though, before we let you go, the flip side. You have an older man and a younger girl. That's rape, and that's clearly rape in the eyes of the public.
You're right. I've said
reconcile this.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Wrong if a man does it, wrong if a woman does it. However, we don't want to just condemn. That's the easy thing, and we should do it. But more importantly, we need to understand why. If it's a man or a woman, so we can prevent it, make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay, clinical psychologist Alan Lipman with clearly some answers and terrific insight. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Coming up, a midterm makeover, why MSNBC's Joe Scarborough